imagine you've heard of astral travel.
Out-of-the-body experience.
Welcome to Postploitation, the Ausploitation podcast.
I'm November.
I'm Daria.
And I'm Callum. And this month we're talking about 1988's Out of the Body.
Or 89. There seems to be not a consensus. Actually, Daria would have the actual answer because it's in the BTS book. Brian Trenchard Smith, not the massive band.
No, it seems to be 1988, at least in production terms. Maybe it had a staggered release or something.
Possibly.
Yeah, it was confusing. Everything about this movie was confusing.
Because I was watching it thinking this was actually must have been made for TV. And then, of course, they dropped F-bombs and there was large amounts of blood. So I'm like, no, this must have been a cinema release. So, yeah. But no, Brian Trenchard Smith has directed this amazing...
Well, we say directed. He say he claims responsibility for it. That's what he says in Adventure System B-Movie Trade.
Which is true, yes. This is... What's the name of that non-name that they use?
What?
Alan Smithy.
Alan Smithy.
Oh.
Yes. Which if you have the...
Well done on your...
But yeah, if you have the USA Today that they did for October 21st, 2015...
Remarkably, I don't, but go on.
Well, I have like 2 or 3 because DeLorean owner and all that kind of craziness.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah, the Jaws 14 or whatever it is actually
Smithy.
directed by Alan Smithy. Yes.
Of course.
And produced by Steven Spielberg's son, I think, is on the poster. But
Or the third or something.
Yes.
Isn't his son Max?
Max Spielberg, yeah, and it's
I keep
directed
thinking I've got
by-
it wrong
produced
because
by-
that's also John Landis' son name. And I'm going, they can't both be called Max, and apparently they are.
I'm really curious. I'm sorry, I did a little sideline because of Ghostbusters, but the Ghostbusters movie's coming out soon.
Well,
and
I was
there's a
getting
bunch of
sidelined by this
references to-
actual film because the main female star in it is the daughter of Barry Humphries.
Yes, and we realised as we were writing up the names, there's also a Linda Newton, and I'm wondering whether or not Linda Newton is any relation to Burt Newton, because
Well, Newton's a
this seemed
common
like,
enough name, isn't
but
it?
it seemed like this kind of a movie.
I know he's got a son called Matt.
I love Matt Newton.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say that.
Oh,
because
shit.
there were charges.
He was on that
Thank God You're
improv show.
Here.
Yeah.
He was really good on Thank God You're Here.
Yeah.
He actually came to the NFSA office when I was working in Melbourne, and it took so much work to resist saying, Matt, thank God you're here. Because I could just picture him turning around and walking the fuck out.
Okay, unfortunately, this session we are recording, poor old November is coming out
I'm
of the...
dying.
Coming at the tail end of a very bad cold. She's kicked most of it, but she's coughing a lot, which means
It's
I'm
not
going to
the
be picking
Rona.
up a
We
couple
are
of
not
things.
all going to die.
Definitely not the Rona.
I mean, we are all going to die, but not
Are we?
soon.
We might not. You never know.
I do.
All right, okay, fine. Yes, we're all going to
Have you read that short story about the guy who wishes for immortality and then he doesn't die and then he keeps not dying until like...
The end of the
every-
universe.
Yeah.
Well, no, there's a thing which says that if you end up immortal,
You will be trapped under
you
something.
will end up trapped under something. It's apparently just this sort of law of averages.
You would have to say not feeling pain to go along with immortal.
Yeah, because you will be like caught in something or whatever.
Have
You will end
every
up.
bone broken.
You will end up in like a non-survivable situation that you will just keep going over and over and over. That was
Because
that
there are people who... There are
Are
real
immortal?
people in the world who don't feel pain.
Yes.
And
they're
they have
constantly-
shorter lifespans than...
Yeah, because they're always burning themselves and
Yeah,
doing
exactly.
crazy terribleness to themselves. But this is the opposite. Not this movie, though. Though I'm sure there must be exploitation movies about immortality or, like, long-lived people. Oh, actually, that was the premise of the convict one. Was that, yeah, they kind of live for... Anyway, so because...
So we should actually talk about the out of the body.
And look, before we even go into this, I've got to lead off with, that is a janky as fuck title. Because
Isn't it?
everyone knows astral projection is out of body
body.
experiences.
But then is it... I mean, it was before... Oh, fuck me. It might not have been
It was
before
before,
Google.
No, it was before
Like before
Google.
search engines.
Yes.
I just learned today that IMDb is 30 years old.
Yes.
So, mind blown. Yeah, out of body being such a common title, maybe that's why they said the...
I went looking, and the only thing I could think was that maybe by that stage there was a movie or two already called Out of Body, but I couldn't necessarily pick one that was like, okay, this is the movie that obviously they needed to change.
It's not a great way to distinguish.
It's no, and it's so
yeah.
And I'm
strange.
kind of surprised this isn't one of the ones that has 37 other titles.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's just because there is flip all written about this online.
Yeah. This one flew under the radar. Mostly, sorry BTS, we've got to go down this road at some point, but there's very little about it, and that's one of the reasons I thought it was maybe a
And
movie.
like he said, don't watch Love Pandemic. Like maybe don't watch this one.
I don't know. I really
Love Pandemic was fine.
We liked Love Pandemic. Love Pandemic was fun. This one was.
Well,
Yeah,
I said
we'll get to
fine, not fun, but go on.
No, it was fun too.
It was
Come
interesting.
On. There were large amounts of it that were cool. So this is Out of the Body, a movie. Well, I was going to say centered around, but centered around nothing.
Well, what's the pressy on IMDb?
Okay, all right. So this is the thing. So the reason I was explaining about November is that I'm going to be taking on some of her things, and one of them is reading out the very basic précis, and it's some
Which is usually very wrong.
Yes. So, some gravity-defying being is killing women in Sydney, Australia, and removing their eyes. The only hope of catching the fiend lies in a hapless man with a psychic link to the killer, who is soon suspected of the crimes. Which I think is wrong, because not
That is
fucking soon
100%
enough.
wrong, and not soon enough.
So what we have is a movie which is, I guess, meant to be based around the concept of astral projection.
No, it's How Much Do We Love the Exorcist?
Well, actually, it's really funny you should say that, because I was like tagging movies as I was going through this, going, okay, so this was made after this was made after this.
It was made after last month's movie, and there's certainly some connective tissue there.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
This might be one of David Hannay's thing.
Did you watch last month's movie? Because I didn't.
No, I did.
You did?
They did.
Oh, and Daria on the podcast saying, oh, they can't be here because they're busy tricking and smoking. Moving fucking house.
Moving out and bringing my future bride into my home. And what the fuck, man? Seriously.
I mean, I'm not saying we weren't drinking and smoking. Oh, whoa.
Well,
Callum
I
was helping me move house.
I was half of that.
You were half of that.
I was doing the
I
drinking.
think I made up for the both of us.
Probably. Okay.
Look, one day I might not be in an episode, and you can decide for yourselves what I'm doing then.
Oh. Could we physically create an episode without Daria to at least drive the
There is not
recording?
a chance. This does not happen without Daria.
Well, we have all the new toys now, so... Anyway,
Yeah, she runs them.
Yeah, that's true. She does. Yeah, we can, like, call each other and record it. Boop.
Daria has the news board and has the power of God.
Yes, I am between jobs at the moment, and my previous job paid me a little bit of money to go away, and I spent some of the money, and admittedly a surprisingly small amount on like a proper podcasty kit, which is A, why we might sound a little better, but B, Daria now has a big old board with sliders and big green buttons and stuff. So thank you, Roadcaster.
Effects.
Let's see how it goes. Yes.
Thank you, Road. Made in Australia.
Made in
Bloody
Australia.
tops.
Yeah. So we'll see how that all goes. Although there may be some degradations at some point because...
I'm dying.
And you're also no longer technically with us locally for ease of recording.
That's
so
right.
In the future, you may be
It's an
phoning it
8-hour
in.
drive.
Literally phoning. 8-hour drive?
There and back.
Oh, right. Okay.
I mean,
fine.
technically it's a 6-hour drive, but you know me and my car.
Yeah, true. But anyway, back to the movie. So,
Which we should actually talk about at some point.
So what we have is a 1988 horror movie where Australian actor Mark Hembrow playing a guy by the name of David Gaze.
So he was the dude from Man from Snowy River 2?
Man from Snowy River 2.
Was that around the same time even?
It was literally the same year. So if we assume the production year of this 1988, then 1988 is the year of production of the second Man from Snowy River movie. And he plays Jim Craig's best friend when Jim Craig returns. So you've got this weird kind of bracket where he's in basically one of the top produced films of that era in Australia.
Yeah.
And one of the lesser produced films.
We couldn't find a box office on this anywhere.
And I think as an 80s look, so he's mulleted, but he's got a face shape
It's not really a... Well, like, maybe it is a mullet. It's not like a serious mullet.
Okay, so there are mullets which
It's
are
not
mega
a
mullets.
mullet,
No.
but it's not a mullet.
It's a bit more of the Mel Gibson from Lethal Weapon type mullet, where you can kind of see it, but it's
Yeah,
tweaked in,
okay.
as opposed to a MacGyver mullet, which was a mega mullet. Mega mullet? Cool.
It's closer to the mullet a lot of people actually had.
Yes. Although these days, God, have you seen the mullets back and they're leaning into it?
Oh,
they're like
my
shaved
God.
sides of the head now. It's like the joke mullet. I don't know whether people are wearing them ironically or not.
No, they're
Are
not.
you wearing them ironically? Fuck, man.
They're
Seriously.
not. Because we have a good friend that has that right now.
Do we? Mm-hmm. So Mark Hembrow, and this is the thing, because I was looking at his face, and I remember thinking that he looked very much like Kiefer Sutherland from the same period in the 80s. You know, you look at him in those
No,
movies.
no, he doesn't have Kiefer's bone structure. I see where you're coming from, though.
He has it in... It's going to sound really terrible for Australian actors, and I don't mean it this way.
This is going to be bad.
If you assume that Australian actors are not that mega...
Are you trying to say he's the dime store ripoff? He's not Superman, he's like Super Guy.
If you look at most Australian actors as being the actor you can get that aren't that insane symmetrical face craziness that you get from America, he's like a human take on that same thing. And yeah, I thought he was dead handsome for a 1980 in that 1980s.
I absolutely
vibe.
couldn't tell because the resolution of this film was so bad.
It was not terrible. It was obviously captured from a VHS because there is actually a point where we get the VHS.
Yeah,
They lose the V-hold.
Yeah, this is from YouTube, so...
Yeah, and there is definitely a point where you
But,
see
at least the movie is accessible for you if you want to watch it at home.
Yes. Oh, actually, that's a really good point. Yes, so jump online and enjoy it. It's not... I was going to say it's not terrible.
Well, you can listen to us, then decide for yourselves. I mean, decide for yourselves anytime. We're not ruling your brain. Do whatever you want. Go out, get high, get laid, have fun.
But why would you be listening to this podcast if you're not at least intending to see the film? Anyway, so we have... I'm just trying to think about the best... Because one of the problems I've got with this movie is that it doesn't exposit enough.
Yeah, it's really confusing. We didn't quite have to have a blank wall with post-it notes and thumbtacks and red string, but we weren't far from.
And if I just give it a summary, by default I will be making explanations that you don't get when you watch the movie the first time.
Yes.
And I don't just mean about spoilers. It's like...
It's not spoilers, it's just like, this is what's going on. They just don't tell you.
No.
Which is weird because it opens with exposition... that
Up the
doesn't-
razoo.
Yeah, it doesn't really pertain to anything with
No.
that sex position scene at the start.
It makes no sense. Although, that was one of the things I will say that was
actually-
fucking hilarious. So, we open to credits, slow credits over Sydney City, very foreboding music, and then it goes, directed by Brian Trenchard Smith.
And the music changes.
instantly cuts to porn music, and there's a sex scene, which I thought was really
absolute porn music.
Which they paused during to discuss the content of one party's thesis.
And I
Yes.
couldn't catch who she was studying. We both listened to it several times. We couldn't hear what name she was saying.
The world can wait another night to learn about the Egyptian sun temple of Amenhotep.
Yeah, it's the ancient temple of an Egyptian thing, and so...
I'm sure it wasn't made up.
No, one of the issues we had with it, because of the audio, is it's difficult to tell what stuff you're meant to be able to clearly hear and what stuff's meant to be a bit...
Yeah, and most of it is very clear, but we just didn't catch her saying this one thing.
I think it's kind of supposed to just establish that she believes in some kind of mysticism because she's into ancient sun temples and things.
I would completely agree with you, except it doesn't establish that whatsoever.
No. And this is one of the things. It was a missed potential because I thought there was a cat motif that at least played out at part of the film. And knowing the Egyptian history, man, we were already really...
Further into the film than they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically we just got two people shagging and we're talking mysticism, but...
Good. All right. So let's rapid fire the explanation. I know I normally try to go up. So we have a guy who is having nightmares, and he realizes after a couple of murders that are happening in the area that the nightmares he's having are of the women who are being murdered. He is going out with a girl who has been working on an Egyptian thesis, and she is open to the concept that he is astrally projecting, hence he is out of the body. And we follow him trying to determine who is doing the killings based on the fact that he's able to see them as they're about to happen.
He doesn't see the
can't work
murder
out who it
actually
is.
happen. It cuts out before then. So it sees the murder about to happen.
Yeah.
He doesn't see it happen and he can't see who's doing it.
No, and he occasionally then after the murders gets flashbacks.
Yes.
When he realises that they're legitimate murders. So
As one would have flashbacks to dreams.
yeah. So if we assume the clunky as hell title Out of the Body as the out of body experience, we have someone who at the early stages we're like, okay, he should be getting insights into the murders. His girlfriend at the time is studying a thesis on Egyptian...
Daria, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think we learn the girlfriend's name until around an hour 5 into this movie when she leaves the note.
I don't think so either.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, we were
That's
talking
just
about
one of the ways this movie is confusing.
And yeah, just got to brush past. I'm not even sure it would have that Neva's name would have hit the sides if I didn't go, oh, that's similar to Nova's name.
Well, actually, no, that's a good point, because you would have noticed it if it had come up, and it didn't.
Whereas the lead guy, David's name, David Gage, we know his full
Said
name, he
all the
says
time.
it many, many times.
Yeah.
Because he's a guy. That's what you get. And this is actually one of the... So we've talked...
No, this movie passes the Bechdel test.
It does. Many times.
Not many, but a few.
A few times. No. And again, this is another potential subplot. But what I was going to say is we talked before about the fact that when we do this recording, because I apparently have a brain like a sieve, we have a big whiteboard where we write down primary
Main
people.
cast and crew.
Main cast and crew. This one basically has every person that appears in the movie, but we have actually had to write down who each of the people are underneath
So
us.
it's got character's name, actor, their role in the film, are you girlfriend, ex-wife, and then it's got the order they die in as well.
Because there are so many people whose presence, it's important in the film, but is so poorly... connected that you couldn't work out when we actually ran the credits and were writing down the names. It was like, who's that? Is she so-and-so or is she so-and-so? No, wait a minute. She's the interviewer. No. That's the ex-wife.
Oh, yeah, and two characters do look quite similar.
Yeah. And there's a lot of 80s
Which we'll come
as
to.
well.
Yeah, there are some spectacular 80s costumes in this.
Oh, yes,
Loved
the first victim just kind of crams the entire 1980s into her office.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And clearly, typing is not a big part of her job because she's got the computer and some other equipment directly in front of her, but the keyboard is off to the side of that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Very
There's
it's
no
like
H&S there.
display office.
Yes. With the new computer stuff that everybody has.
Well, no, I'm sure I've mentioned it on the pod before, but I remember when Dad got his first computer, he didn't turn it on for 3 days, didn't know what to do with it. Because all email did was you could email that end of the office. I could just get up and go over there.
Hey, I used to play with a friend of mine who would come in literally bringing his entire computer so that we could hard cable them up and play Doom against each other and then Mech Warrior against each other.
I used to do that with the Doom and all.
Yeah.
In fact, I was probably there.
I actually went to a couple of
Daria was
LAN
the friend.
parties.
Dude, I remember you going to LAN parties. It doesn't seem that long ago, actually.
Local area networks where we have this weird little janky opening sequence where we have an in-betweeny sex and then sleeping scene between two people and a woman who is being photographed and interviewed as an upcoming lady in business. And we know nothing because no names, no anything at all. Mm-hmm. And we get to the end of this kind of janky back and forth sequence. As I said, the girlfriend is studying the Egyptian sun temple of something or other. It's very
not
hard
Ra,
to
don't
pick
add
it
us.
out. No. But she and David Gaze, Mark Hembrow's character, or Hembrow, I'm not too sure how to pronounce it, are doing the business. And then he is sleeping, I guess, and dreaming. And she walks out of the session into the evening and is murdered somehow.
You said that confusingly. So,
yes.
And which it is. But yeah, David and his girlfriend Neva shag, go to sleep, and then we have the first female victim.
That's right.
Who walks out of her office, jumps 20 metres in the air to her doom.
That bit was done really well. I actually
was.
thought... So she walks out into this back alley and she's about to get into her car and she's yanked up.
There's some weird electrics. Some
and
wood
mist.
falls over from a pile. Mist, yes.
And then she's murdered. And she's murdered by being hung from like the second or
Hanged.
third... She's murdered by being hanged from the second or third story of the fire escape.
Yeah.
But she's yanked up into the sky. And I thought that
really
was really
quickly,
cool.
it was very
really
well
good.
done.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Oh, and her eye was missing. One or both?
Both.
Both.
Yes. And this is one of the things. So...
The hole in the brain, we didn't get around that. Like,
Okay.
with the whole movie, was still confusing.
So this is the thing. From the horror movies of the period, and even now, there's an exposition level. It's whether or not the movie is meant to be telling a greater story about consumerism or... Sorry, we have one of the interns.
So many options.
Go.
What is your cat here? What
Just
the
a
hell?
little pause
is.
to be besotted.
Yeah, there you go. There's plenty of room. You can settle down.
She knows that.
So whether or not the movie is meant to be telling a greater story about consumerism, like the Evil Dead series, or... Meat eating, yeah, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Mascara.
Or whether it's just... Let's have fun with the historical concept of mummies, like The Mummy.
Or like when your sister eats your gay boyfriend.
What?
I'm sorry, which of the one now?
Raw.
Raw? Oh, right.
Rav.
Nice.
I'm sure it's a metaphor for your sister eating your gay boyfriend.
Right.
Or ravenous, where, you know, it's not necessarily a greater conversation or anything. You need a plot line that runs through the film.
Yes, that's how they frequently work.
And this one seems to pick up 2 or 3 sets of threads, but then doesn't go anywhere with them. So, like,
Yeah.
you lead off with Egyptian, and there's a lot of cat motif of the word go. So he has his Siamese-type cat on top of the television. There's discussion about Egyptians. There's the walkway that they have above, which I'm signalling with my hands because that's really useful in a podcast, with very clear cat's eyes. And
The windows in the walkway did look like cat's eyes. It was quite cool.
And then a little bit later into it, there is a cat motif because the
There's cat
ex-wife
posters
has got
in the background.
Yeah, and there's a cat on a desk. But that's not carried anywhere, and then it never resolves. So you wonder, is there an Egyptian spirit that's come through? And that
But
could have
that's
been
just dropped.
Yeah, and I think, thinking back, were they going for a red herring, or are they going for, you're supposed to think the cat is the evil presence, only it's not? But it comes across as...
Daria, how could a cat be an evil presence? Back to you.
But yeah, it doesn't look like it's a red herring that's been snatched away or revealed. It looks like they've just
Forgotten
gone,
about it.
oh, we're sick of this cat thread.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I've written red herring like 3 or 4 times in my notes.
And in different plot lines.
Yeah, is this intended, or is this just a thing?
Which also then leaves the origin of the eventual demon as being apparently there are demons.
Yeah.
But then are they? Because we're still questioning by the end. Is it a demon? Where does it come from? Is it actually a demon? Is possession a thing?
And what I wrote down was that very early on, I realised it felt to me like a movie made by someone or some people who are so familiar with the underlying concepts of
100% right.
horror movies that they hit the beats of what a horror movie is without ever actually...
It's like Dan's first book, The Rook.
Oh, we're going to be careful on this one.
One of the characters he'd written so much about and then realised, oh, I really should have mentioned way back then, he's a vampire. That's fairly important information.
And there's a real danger in doing that. There's a real danger in getting so involved in a storyline or a plot or just knowing a
that first
particular
time author
thing
managed to nail.
that you forget what it's like to not be on the same page.
Yeah.
And I can imagine meetings during the production of this going, well, let's have them do this and let's have them do this and this is really cool and I saw this effect on whatever, without remembering to say, oh yeah, well, by the way, the reason that the demon... There's no explanation as to where the demons come from.
No.
Or what their intent... So,
what its power is it getting stronger?
Yeah.
Where would it go afterwards?
Does it just like plucking out eyes, or is this some kind of, I have to get the eyes of 14 virgins by the solstice or something?
And there are no virgins, and we haven't discussed further the first scene.
yeah, and that's the thing.
You're confused? Fuck yeah, we are too.
And this is the thing. The idea is that all of the bodies, there's some reference to the fact that there's a hole into the brain and the eyes are removed. And the hole into the brain could be trepanning, and that's a whole thing as well, where people used to actually have the third eye drilled out.
Which I didn't get until, the third, fourth watching this, because we don't see it on every victim.
And
we
it's
don't
not
see every
referenced.
victim the same way. It's not referenced. I think that, like the first time it's mentioned, hole in the skull, removing the eye, it sounded like that was the same thing. Like there was a hole in the skull to remove an eye, as opposed to an eye was removed. And there was also like a drill hole into the skull where the third eye would be.
Yeah.
And it wasn't explained. Still not sure.
No.
And again, it should be building till we get to that point, but it at first just says, oh, the body was mutilated in some way. Then it's, oh, the police wouldn't confirm whether or not the eyes were removed, and it means we're quite late in the game because, as you say, that we find out there's another hole to be going on with.
That was the other question, because I read a bunch of critics' reviews on this, and it said they come in to a series of murders. Like, we come in, there's been one murder, but the critics' reviews kept seeming to say this was the latest in a string of murders, and we've just come in now.
So this is the thing. So was the first murder we saw the first murder?
We don't know.
Yeah, it seems so in the story because when the newsreader comes on and tells us about the first murder of stockbroker Maggie Jarrett, she just talks about her being murdered.
Played by Margaret Gerard, which I could be be wrong. What?
Oh, sorry. I just love they were obviously getting like really tired of names by that point. So Margaret Gerard plays Maggie Jarrett.
I think you mean Margaret Trenchard Smith.
Apparently so.
Yeah. Sorry, back to you.
Yeah, just describes Ms. Jarrett, her job and her position in the world, etc., etc., and basically just that she's been murdered with very little other information, not even saying that there's no word if this is the latest victim of the Sydney side slasher or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, we don't hear a lot of it directly in the press from the newsreader. But it's like there's a killer out there, but there's no, it's a serial killer. And even someone comes later and says it's a copycat.
So this, maybe only because I watched it fairly recently, but this movie kept reminding me of
You
Highlander.
mean an hour ago?
No, recently the other movie I'm about to reference.
Oh, soz.
Totally fine. So only because I watched it fairly recently, I kept thinking about Highlander. And I remember the murder subplot that comes through it. Because, of course, the thing about Highlander is there's these people keep dying. And you pick up Highlander in the contemporary now of the 1980s after they've had their first fight in the car park and the police are now onto it because somebody's been killed and it's the modern time. And I thought that maybe this movie was going to do the same thing, that they were going to follow that thread. I mean, obviously, if this is the first murder that we see is the one that opens the movie, you would imagine them following that thread. But then as David Gaze, the character, Mark Hembro's character, goes to the police over and over saying this murder is going to happen and this murder is going to happen and then starts naming people, they don't follow on from that.
Like, he's a terrible communicator. And he doesn't say this murder's going to happen, this murder's going to happen. Like, what's the first thing when he calls the police?
He says that there's going to be another murder. I don't know who, where, or when.
Yes. And
except it wasn't even that descriptive because it was who or where, when wasn't even discussed.
Yeah. And that could be an interesting subplot too, him struggling with recognising that it's a real thing. So he has a nightmare, the girl turns up dead, he struggles with the whole, well, maybe it's coincidence. I think there is actually a line to that effect at some point in the movie. It's like, well, I just thought it was a coincidence.
That's early on, which, because one, maybe two, you would think that. You think, wow, that's freaky and terrible, but moving on.
But
I mean, murder aside, if you had two dreams that turned up in the paper the next day...
and that's the point, is that could then become a really interesting plot. He now needs to convince the cops. He wouldn't have a crack at it and then they go, we're going to make this difficult for you, and then just walk away. Yeah, that could be really cool. And the whole bit towards the end when he's finally, don't put me to sleep, don't, track me away.
Put me to sleep has a different connotation.
Well, because he, don't let me sleep and or kill me. I kind of got the impression that by the amount of time he's realised how into these, as in how real the murders are and his connection, that should have happened a lot earlier in the movie.
Yeah.
For me, that would have been...
The police paying attention should have happened a lot earlier in the movie.
Yeah.
This demon is on David's back. Why? It's not like we saw him at the start licking some ancient artifact or something.
No, there is no reason.
It's not like Alison last month, he wasn't born at the right time for etc., etc.
And
or if he was, we don't know.
And you can astral project now. Oh, so that's just something that happens when you're 35.
Yeah.
And 8 months, 2 days old, whatever it is. There's just nothing that leads up to what's going on.
And then there's
nothing that's been released from an Egyptian tomb.
No, he's got some interesting little figures, sort of Papua New Guinean type figures in his...
Papua New Guinean?
Well,
really?
they struck me as those PNG, the kind of the clay figures and things, the totem figures.
Fetishes.
Fetishes, they're the ones, yes. So he's got those, but even though we kind of zoom in on them after a couple of nightmares, there's no suggestion that one of those is the
Repeatedly, we
mask.
zoom in on them, and there's no suggestion that they're new in the house or that they've come from Egypt or anywhere interesting.
And one of them only makes its appearance 3/4 of the way through the film. So there are two ones, one with a weird little thing in its belly and another one with a big head.
The weird thing being spikes coming out.
It looks like spiders.
And the other spikes, I said.
No, I know, but it looks like a spider. It almost looks like a weird little creepy spider.
That didn't cross my mind, and now I have goosebumps.
Sorry. And then suddenly, out of the blue, like 2/3 of the way through the movie, there's a whole nother one that is quite clearly there, but it's a very tall series of heads or something. Yeah. So,
and that just appeared on the wall much later. We've never focused on it before, but there was no connotation that it was new in the house. It's just, it's new that we're filming this thing on the wall.
So,
and we didn't see him, cleaning up his girlfriend's ancient mystical study guides and accidentally
that's right.
read some forbidden text that glowed red as soon as he saw it.
Yeah, he didn't say weird words backwards by mistake or...
Don't read the Latin out loud. He didn't do that.
There's ways of being subversive with it as well, but at the end of the day...
$5 if you read the Lord's Prayer backwards.
Say Candyman 5 times in front of the mirror, man.
Phonetically or by letter?
Ooh.
It's a tough one.
Well, it's usually related to backmasking. That has to be phonetically. So
It
go
does,
phonetically.
you're right.
But at the end of the day, you generally, in this sort of movie, bad shit happens to someone for a bad reason. And there's none of that.
Do you think it's pretending to be Philip Glass?
Sorry. November mentioned about 2/3 of the way through when he's going through his synthesizer music.
Oh,
and he's
right,
just, like,
yes.
simulating being Philip Glass. So
Music on computer?
So what we end up with...
Oh, yeah, we haven't even said. So, Mark is a composer. He has a job at University of Sydney.
Yes. So this is the thing. So that's our very early stage. So we have David Gaze. He wakes up. He's able to see murders as they're happening and
or
tries to
murder
convince
at that point.
the police of them as the murders continue.
No, I'll get it. Detective Sergeant, where are you going?
Hello. Yeah, my name's David Gaze.
Go on.
No, I don't know who she is.
Let me give you a tip, Mr. Gaze. Go home and sleep it off. Yeah. You feel much better in the morning. Another nut. Says a woman's going to be murdered tonight. But he doesn't know where or who.
Fuck it!
So basically what we end up with is you could also look at this as this descent into the David Gaze story as well. And we might as well go
Descent into madness?
spoiler territory here. Because initially you get the impression he's doing insights, that whole kind of psychic helping the police thing, except of course the police don't care about him. And it's not even that cool 80s way that cops don't care until the reality is presented to them a la Gremlins or something. It's just, they're just fucking stupid.
There's no other way to say it. Of course, there are synonyms exist, but yeah, absolutely clueless. Won't even take things at face value.
And there's a sequence where, so we have a newsreader by the name of Mary Mason, who's...
Played by Mary Regan, continue with your name.
Yes.
Making it a Tony Danza of this movie.
Yeah. Not quite the Jerry Seinfeld, but getting there. And she ends up being victim number 3, but she's got this relationship with a guy, and after the murder, his shoes turn up in her bedroom, and the police are immediately like, oh, we should arrest you because your shoes were there. By now, you've literally had a guy come up and tell you who the next murder victim is going to be.
They've interacted with him like 3 times now, including apprehending him outside the apartment.
Yeah, and he's still not in his cell.
And they're still just like, just go home and sleep it off.
Yeah, we'll murder the one other male that's part of this movie. It's so bizarre.
He must have like innocent vibes.
Certainly doesn't fucking look it from where I'm sitting, seriously.
Me neither. I just mean to those 2 police officers.
Maybe.
Yeah, well, when they catch him outside Mason's apartment, he's also going, oh, I didn't do anything. It's like, the thing you're doing right now, that's something.
Yeah,
yes. That's right.
Whatever your intent, you're not actually supposed to prowl around people's yards and stare in their windows.
Yeah.
So the first 2 murders happen, and they're the confirming murders. He has no idea who the victims are.
The first 2 murders are the stockbroker. Oh my god. Because no one in this movie locks or even closes their front doors.
Yeah, because half their houses are open
Just
to the outside
completely
world.
open.
Which does happen in a lot of serial killer and slasher movies. You except for a few, you don't get many. Now to catch my latest blonde curly-haired victim.
Well, that's the thing.
Leave a key under the mat.
If you don't have a physical
00001
it shouldn't matter.
00002.
And the 18 more hours of this film.
Because that's the joke in the original Scream, isn't it? When Drew Barrymore gets killed, is that, you know, the entire front of the house basically looks out onto the pool, and while she is talking to someone who is threatening to kill her, she's like all still laughing and joking and making popcorn in that cool popcorny way that they have. But yeah, so, and actually that was one of the other things I noticed, was that the very first shot that we see of a building outside of the cityscape in the opening credits is the house that David Gaze lives in, with this, like, kind of...
Everyone in this film is so rich.
but low budge Amityville Horror. So if you look at the Amityville Horror house, it's like famously this sort of big barn style with big windows on both sides.
Yeah, sure, big supporting beams.
Yeah, we get like a single pane on either side. It really does look like the low budge Sydney suburb version of the Amityville Horror house. But so we have a couple of initial confirming murders where he realizes.
Yeah, so the first murder is the stockbroker. The second murder is the advertising woman. So they're all really successful women.
And okay, so this is something else I want to say. Do we believe there is any message in this movie at all?
It doesn't. I mean, they're killing these beautiful, successful women, but it doesn't.
Didn't come across as that to you as a girl?
Didn't come across as. I mean, you can ask Daria that too, but it didn't come across as sexist, and he's not an incel because he's getting laid.
Yeah.
What is the age difference with him and his girlfriend?
No worse than Indiana Jones.
So no worse than illegal.
Yes.
Good, great.
Yeah, in movie terms, they're basically right next to each other, really.
Pretty much.
In movie terms.
But no, she's obviously a grown adult.
Yeah, and she's doing a PhD, but he's teaching.
So I do want to visit this concept because
yes,
I did look for a plot line, and there's no two ways about it. Every woman that's murdered is a successful, independent female.
That's right.
And if you wanted to look at this movie...
They don't need them no man.
No, but you didn't get don't be a success... you didn't get the equivalent of, the Jane Austen thing of if you don't marry, you'll get consumption and die. You didn't get the flip side of that as being if you're a successful, independent woman.
In fact, our main character, David Gaze, had a feminist tome that he was reading.
Yeah, the Carla Dupre book.
Oh, they're all speed readers as well. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
Every book just gets absorbed. In fact, isn't there a point...
Or they just start halfway through a novel.
Isn't there a point where the psychiatrist, she moves from turning pages to like flick, flick, flick with her thumb, I think, while she's reading? There? I think so, yeah. So because I was curious about that, cis white male or that sort of... It didn't seem to me like that was the message either, don't be a successful woman, but...
It's not a vibe I got.
The victims?
Daria?
Me either, no. Yeah. I suppose at most I saw a pattern of the victims are all women of a certain age bracket. But yeah,
they were the same age bracket too, and that didn't occur.
But it wasn't like a Joss Whedon don't fuck or you die sort of thing.
No.
Yeah. All right,
and
cool.
there was no, as you say, there's no Converse where some housewife...
We didn't meet any poor people until right at the end of this movie. Oh, and even the poor people wore suits. That was adorbs.
That was a thing though for the longest time. Like your homeless person would always be in a really, really crappy suit because I think that was the whole Salvation Army thing. Is that the only thing that people leave to the salvos use suits? Therefore, anybody homeless will be
leave to
demob suits probably.
Demob. Ah, yes, of course.
That said, your long retired father-in-law was around doing electrics work at the house today, and he's still there in his ironed collared shirt.
Yeah, well, he's classy and awesome and wonderful, and I felt so guilty as I was trying to sort all this out that he was doing that. Anyway, so
people used to dress better. That's what I'm saying.
So we have random murder victims who are still successful, and then we have our first murder victim within the scope of David Gaze as the newsreader.
So this is victim number 3, Mary Mason.
Yes. Now, this is where I want to get into the other potential storyline, where the cat might be a force for good.
No, I want to proceed that, if I may.
Yeah, please.
That he kind of thinks he knows what's going on, but he's just this random, weird-looking dude. Goes up to this...
80s handsome.
If you say so. Goes up to this woman who's on television. So public figure, I don't know if it's local TV or whatever, but goes up to this woman, says hello, I want to talk to you.
Excuse me, Miss Mason. Could you spare a moment?
What's it in connection with?
My name is David Gaze. Could I buy a coffee somewhere?
Sorry, I'm very busy.
Well, then can I talk to you after your show?
Sorry.
Look, it's important.
If you could just tell me what it's in connection with.
Look, I'm not some sort of nut.
No, I'm sorry, Mr.
Gaze.
I really have to go.
Look, I have reason to believe your life is in danger.
What sort of danger?
You know that murderer that's on the loose?
You know something about that?
I have reason to believe that you're going to be his next victim.
Oh, Jesus! Are you threatening me? Is that what this is?
No! Look, this... Miss Mason, I'm trying to warn you. I work at the university. I'm not...
And he's somehow surprised. She's just like, no, I'm really busy. It's like, can I get you a drink after work? It's like, how about you just say, this is really fucking important. Coffee or a drink after work don't matter. I need to tell you about this news story that you're currently reporting on. I have information. He doesn't do any of that. He's just terrible at approaching people.
And at the risk of invoking some stereotypes, why doesn't he bring along his girlfriend who believes him?
Oh, that never even occurred. Yeah, absolutely.
Because he does start the, I have reason to believe you might be attacked next, but by that point she already thinks he's a nutter, and this is probably compounding it. If he came along with a woman so she wouldn't feel this lone man pressing me thing.
You are so right. Well, harassing.
That's the word. Sorry, yes, wrong word. Harassing me thing, and someone else is backing him up who might also be able to just, honey, down a notch.
Yeah. And so the newsreader disappears inside the building. There's a security guard on the outside of the building, and our main character is just like, oh shucks, that didn't work, and walks off. It's like, just say to that security dude, I think she's in trouble. She needs 24/7 protection. That's all you need to say.
So Mary Mason's murder.
That's very alliterative.
Bingo. Is the one, it's the pivot point murder. Because, as
You're right.
he says, it's the first time that he knows who it is. It's the first time that he's aware of
this is the first time that he knows the name of the person.
Yeah. But he's struggling with his own... And there's no uncertainty. That's the other thing. If he doubted, if he's like, oh, I don't know, I think maybe you're about to murder, I don't... By now he's convinced. He's absolutely certain. So he is now forced to, you need to take care of yourself. Yes, the delivery on it. If he was still struggling...
It is interesting that all of the women are single. They're not sleeping with a partner or someone else in the house.
No.
Who might hear or see things.
On there. Oh, I see. They're on there. And that... Okay, I need to park that because I want to go back just very, very quickly to the cat thing. Another potential story thread. And the tail end story thread of the potential Egyptian stuff, which then is totally... Because cats were huge in Egyptian mythology, and they could be forces for good and forces for evil, and they could be protective forces. Now. I know, right? We're looking at our interns. But the cat is sitting on top of the television. So he wakes up from having seen this woman who is now going to be the next victim. And the television continually comes on. It does that thing I can never remember the name for, where the television continually comes on. And then it's after about, I think, the third switch, or maybe the second, that he realises who it is and that he has to do something. The cat's on top. And there was this really interesting potential subplot for the cat is a force for good against whatever the evil spirit is.
Well, the cat was in that same position while the two were having sex in the first scene.
Yeah, which, by the way, I initially thought the reflection on the screen was it actually being broadcast on television or captured on a camera. That kind of weirded me out because that's...
Yeah, that one didn't occur to me.
Yeah, well, I'd seen... What's the one where the guy's watching... No. The guy's watching all the security cameras. Not Body of Evidence. It was the other big sexy movie from the late 80s, early 90s. It was... Is it Basic Instinct?
I don't know, because
you
it's
don't
a
know
movie
because
you
it's
see.
in my brain, isn't it?
Sliver?
Daria is usually very good at that.
No, Basic Instinct is...
Sliver?
Sliver. That's the one. Sliver. Thank you. Sorry. Yes.
Dodge, she's good.
She's amazing. She's done many of these recordings with me now. She knows where my
Thank
brain
goodness
goes.
I accidentally hired that movie once.
Accidentally.
Yeah, getting from the video shop where you got one of those bundles and like you always were kind of randomly choosing the last of the seven to get the cheap thing. And I grabbed it instead because I was kind of just on my way out. Grabbed it instead of one near it that I was kind of interested in seeing.
Oh, wow. Okay. I thought you were going to say that you were very disappointed you didn't get home to the movie Silver, which you were hoping for as the historical analysis of the silver mining industry.
The forgotten silver mining industry. Anyway, back to you.
Nice. So, yeah. Anyway, yes. And that could have been an interesting subplot too. So if we had established, because there was a discussion about Egyptian at the start, that maybe there were these two forces that were battling each other over all this time, and the cat was trying to do good,
two wolves,
which would then explain why the cat
This
was
isn't
killed.
what it looks like.
And again, another potential thread that's dropped. And I wondered at that point whether they were never certain what they wanted to say, and they positioned a bunch of potential story threads. But then either the money ran out or the time ran out or whatever.
And so little's been written about this film that...
Yeah. I mean, by the end of it...
Nothing's been confirmed in that way.
The end sequence reminded me of nothing more than fucking RoboCop, where she's walking around the ruined buildings trying to sort of defeat him. Anyway, so that was a bit of a shame as well. I thought that could have been a really interesting subplot too, with the cat, continually turning the television back on through special cat powers until he realizes he needs to do something. But then we are introduced to the special guest star, Shane Bryant.
Which, I was reading through the credits before putting the thing together for Callum to legibly write on our whiteboard, and I just skipped him because I had no recollection of him whatsoever.
That's Mason's fuck buddy, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's it. Yes. So he's the one who briefly makes an appearance as a potential murder suspect, even though the dude who's been yelling about who's going to be killed is just still out and about on the street.
But he left shoes there, so must be guilty. Which, I agree. Unless he didn't drive there, he walked. I can't drive without shoes.
Some people do, though.
Queenslanders.
But why not just put your shoes on?
Yeah.
Oh, no, yeah, he got freaked out and he just ran. That's all it...
Oh,
that's
right, yeah.
his entire explanation.
Because he encountered the spirit.
Yeah.
But we don't find out about that until way
we
later.
We don't see it on screen. He just describes later when the police go to see him and he's saying, "Oh, can we go talk over here?"
Yeah.
So his colleagues don't hear. So they go while he's having a cigarette so he can explain while smoking next to the no smoking sign.
Yes, I did. You mentioned that, yes. But it's his own studio, so what the hell. But yeah, this concept of show don't tell, and he basically then explains... Because if we'd seen that happen...
It would have been interesting.
Yeah, and it's not like the owner of the shoes is a particular secret. We know there's only two men roughly involved in Mary Mason's life.
Well, one of the cops holds up a shoe and says to the other, "What do you think about this?" The other cop says, "Won't go with your clothes," or whatever. But it's not even explained. He's holding up a man's shoe.
Yeah.
And maybe if the resolution were better, it would be clearer. But he's just holding up a shoe.
Yeah.
Tell if it's a man's shoe, a woman's shoe, a unisex shoe, shoe that's non-binary.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, there's only one other man in the world, so we better get him.
It's like the ultimate
man who
Star
isn't a
Wars
cop.
effect. And that's the thing, because, the certain types of shoes were sort of ubiquitous across genders in the 1980s. I mean, as you say, maybe it was a bit clearer. But that whole thing, it wouldn't go with your clothes, is a sort of... Normally, you'd expect that to be a joke when it's the other person's gender.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it seems really strange, and they track him back because, yes, the Cinderella effect... And he comes clean about the fact that they're shagging, including with a razor blade.
Oh, that was really interesting. Did you notice that?
Yeah, I forgot to park that in my head as a thing, but yeah.
The first time I watched it, I couldn't work out what it was. The second time I thought maybe it was a feather. But then, yeah, that was definitely a razor blade that they were playing with.
Yeah, and I definitely got the impression, now that I put it back together, that they were going to get down to something, and I don't just mean... the usual something.
Yeah.
Neither had many scars, though.
Well, I kind of got the impression that he was going to cut her clothes off.
She wasn't wearing much there.
No.
Well, she was just in
Yeah, but the film's not
bra
afraid of boobs.
panties and the stockings.
Yeah, the film's not afraid of boobs. So I kind of got the impression he was going to cut off the bra.
I don't think
or
a film
something.
can be afraid of boobs.
No, but this one in particular was not afraid of boobs.
No boobs last month.
Yeah, this is true.
In fact, the makers put their foot down and said, no boobs, stop asking us for boobs.
Yeah.
We respect women. No, I don't think they said that. Anyway, go on.
Well, don't forget, I mean, the Nullarbor nymph that made a point of having equal parts boobs and full frontal male nudity. So
Well, not equal parts, loads more male nudity.
That's true, yes. Good on it.
Don't think that one passed the Bechdel test.
No, well, considering there was like 97% one room, one car cabin drama between two men. But, so they were looking to get freaky, but then they didn't, so it didn't explain the razor blade. And then it was all...
that sex scene got interrupted because she thought she saw
David Gaze
David
is
Gaze
our character.
outside.
Because she did.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Caught in David's gaze.
And there was yeah, anyway, there's a side potential plot there. But then that is all explained away in exposition. That's all explained away in an interview sequence in the studio afterwards when they're going to arrest him because, he's a man and he's not the guy who's been continually saying the victim's
Talking
names.
about the crime.
So,
I have a question.
Only one?
Many, but I don't know a lot about astral projection. I asked Callum, but he just said, write it down. Daria,
You kept throwing
I don't
questions
know
at me.
if you know a lot about astral projection, the science that it is. So, does the spirit turning up in the room fuck with electronics, or was Ghost David Days standing there by the panel flicking light switches off and on again really quickly? I couldn't stop thinking about that.
That was that was what I mean. Generally speaking, psychic kind
Phenomena?
of phenomenon generally have this weird electromagnetic strangeness that supposedly can or can't muck with electricity. It's a trope.
Yes.
Yeah, all those things are getting spooky, the lights are flickering.
Yeah. This was another question that I was wondering as well. We were talking about, out of body, and there's so little exposition about astral projection. And that was the thing that really got me. If we assume for a second that at least the core concept of this movie is astral projection, there's so little explanation of what it is. And in fact, Lydia...
Can we assume this movie has a core concept?
But sorry, yeah, that's the thing I'm not too
Great
sure.
question.
So Lydia ends up reading...
And also, he's not really astral projecting the same way people usually astral project in other astral projection stories.
Which, as we discover, spoiler alert, he is the one doing the murders as well. And then that's another thing...
Oh, his spirit gets up from the body, but the body's fully clothed and he gets up naked. That's unusual in most things. You usually get up with whatever your body is wearing at the time.
You just get 50% opacity.
Yes. That's one of those things that
which we still had.
One of those things that people point out when they're explaining why ghosts aren't real, which is like, well, why are ghosts all dressed in draped stuff? Because clothing doesn't have a spirit. You just, you'll be naked. That's just the way it is.
Well, maybe if they're wearing leather, clothing has a spirit.
Yeah, but you're not
They're
haunted by a ton of
fur.
leather jackets.
Sorry?
You're not haunted by a ton of leather jackets or disembodied fur.
Yeah,
it's
maybe
just-
because there's no such thing as ghosts.
Exactly, that's my point.
Anyway.
But that was the thing. So when Neva. Yeah. So she's like, you need to read more. And then Lydia, the psychiatrist...
Oh, yeah, she's saying that to the shrink, yeah.
That's your entry point to have a voiceover or slow pans on the explanation.
Or a character explaining a thing.
Yeah.
Anything.
Because, they referenced Twilight Zone. So Twilight Zone was a thing. And I know that when X-Files came around, suddenly there was this big re-energized interest in parapsychology and paranormal activity and all of that. But even though I was interested in this kind of stuff at the time as a kid, was it really that ubiquitous that you could just assume that people would totally understand the concepts of astral projection?
I don't think so.
No, and I think less so in
88.
Yeah, I think even maybe by 1998 you could rely on more of the audience at least knowing.
Yeah,
Because
because
you have a
we've
lot of
had
the
so much
X-Files.
more media.
Yeah.
Just as in Back to the Future 2, hey, we're going there again. Just as in Back to the Future 2,
Hang on, time step.
they have the blackboard sequence to explain we changed the past and it changed the future, whereas by now that's something you could say almost as quickly as I said that just then, and you could proceed.
Because of Back to the Future probably is kind of the anchor point. And that's the thing, if I were to decide to make a movie today about spontaneous combustion, just as a sort of a side thing, I would need to assume that the people who are watching, even if they're in the cinema because they're fascinated by the concept of spontaneous combustion,
You need references.
you need references and explanations as to why it happens.
Yeah.
Or, as I would have called it, this spontaneous combustion of stuff or something. Yes, anyway.
I mean, at least we had an episode of Buffy. I can't think of any spontaneous combustion.
At least in spontaneous combustion, it's right there in the name.
I was about to say.
But I would feel the need as a movie maker to explain, okay, these are the reasons people think spontaneous combustion may work, and then at the end crystallize that to here is the reason why this was the thing, whether it's there's rascally kids setting
It's
fire
not
to people
Scooby-Doo, but go on.
but that's the thing, there's no, and I think of Ravenous again as a really good example.
You're just hungry.
Well, there's that too. The concept of the movie is taking the Wendigo myth and carrying it through an arc to explain it. And so this was the opposite. It was the sub-arc. It was like, well, everyone knows astral projection, and then we'll just kind of go with it to make a standard horror movie, and this is what horror movies do. And horror movies have this sequence, and they have this sequence. They have the innocent, and they have the double bluff, the sequence when we're pretty sure that the psychiatrist is going to get killed. And as it turns out, it's Carla Dupre, the feminist interviewer, who we haven't even gotten to yet.
We haven't even mentioned,
God, we're terrible at this.
Are you in an alley? No, we haven't even mentioned that he decides he's going crazy and he gets to go see a shrink the next day. Though I love that she's still charging $150 an hour.
Yeah, which is apparently current session these days.
Very bottom off.
Yeah,
but yeah,
I've never paid that little.
No,
I have.
Oh. So she is our token American, which ticks another exploitation box. We have a foreign star, although not a massive star fallen on hard times the way that a lot of other exploitation-y stuff, although not necessarily fallen on hard times, but in an ebb in their career kind of deal. And I get the impression they kind of put her in the zone of the Scully. She's meant to be the one bringing science in.
I agree.
But then...
No, she's absolutely the Scully. She's finding another way for women to be wrong.
And then
That's
she
what
says,
Scully
oh,
did.
but reality is entirely what you make it.
Oh my God, I wrote that down.
Yes.
Yes.
David, reality is, in fact, what you believe it to be.
No, it fucking isn't. And
Yeah,
God,
but we know that.
mentality
But we
shits
don't
me.
know if she's pandering to him.
Well, he actually then says, don't
humour
humour
me.
me. Yeah, that's the very
But
next
we don't know
line.
if that's her method that
Yeah.
she's using.
So he talks to her and we assume at least provides some basic information which makes her consider that. Perhaps there's something there. But then she becomes his lawyer as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, okay, so he gets this shrink. He gets in to see her instantly. He has a freak out. He knows where he lives. He goes to her place. She lets him crash there on the couch that night. And in the morning, she takes him in to calmly talk to the police. Not to be arrested or anything. This is just to tell my side of the story. The police are still like, you're a weirdo. Fuck on off.
Yeah.
Like, the sergeant has the best acting in this whole film, but
Sergeant or the
fuck,
senior
they're
detective?
dumb.
The older
It
guy or
is
the younger
not
guy?
the senior detective.
Really? Okay. All
No,
right.
no,
you thought
he's
the,
okay.
You thought the shitty sexist sergeant was the best actor?
I thought he was the most natural.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's up there.
Because our man, David Gaze, he is so OTT, ham and cheesing it up.
All right, this is one of those things I can totally see, and they talk about this, that the horror movies really stretch an actor's ability, not necessarily because it means they need to scream a lot and yell a lot, there's a lot of that, but that you need, being scared, being terrified and being out of it is one of those things that if you're not Nicolas Cage, it's difficult to bring to the surface on the spur of the moment.
No, it's well over and above this
But
dude, even before he gets scared.
I don't know,
It's not the wrong direction to go, but he goes a long way down.
Yeah, all right. Okay.
And I'm not saying it's wrong, like, he knows he's doing it, that's the way he's being directed. I mean, he's not like that in the second Man of Story River.
No, the Man
And you've
from
all but quoted Brian Trenchard Smith's book on
Oh, truly?
the guy's nature. He says,
I'm so smart.
where he says, yeah, that Mark was pretty over the top a lot of the time in this, and in some ways it's what the role called for, but also it's the director's job to manage that. And
Yeah,
I
That's
did not.
right.
I remember thinking a couple of times when they were doing some full scenes. So the sequence with
God, we saw his ass way too much.
where they were seeing the sequence with the ex-wife after he's handed the cat over and there's been the death and they're in the shower. That is absolutely a screaming situation. That is absolutely a situation where two people would have a great big screaming fight. And I honestly think both of the actors gave it their all, and that would have been really intense. But
It's not about that, though. I mean, the scene before with the cat was well OTT.
The cat! The bloody cat!
that was weird because he had a real cat in his hand, and there's a certain level of being able to act with a real animal that you... My point being...
That other
Your
people can
success
do.
is screaming at a
Yeah.
cat.
But my point being that it clearly wasn't necessarily a good take.
Actually, I'm going to come in to his defense right now.
Okay, yeah, so that's what I've been trying to do, yeah.
How are you going to do it?
Because clearly it's not necessarily a realistic take.
Yeah,
And
I think it is.
Okay.
Years and years ago, when we lived in Mackay, I had a bad dream about a big-ass spider on the wall right next to me. Do you remember this?
I remember that, yeah.
I'm sure you do. Because I screamed and woke up a bit and screamed louder. And I think then you came up to me and I'm awake and looking at the wall, screamed even louder. This is in real life.
Mm.
And then knew it wasn't there and still had to bury my head
You pulled
under
the
the
up.
covers and cry.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm believing his performance now.
No, and that's the point. You need an actor to dial it up to 11. Okay, here is a crazy sequence. The context of the film, he wakes up after a nightmare where he's begun to now hallucinate the dead
And
bodies.
this is where we're saying the cat could be a force for good because the cat wakes him up.
Yeah. So he's woken up with the nightmare, he's hallucinating, and he then wakes up for real, and it's the cat.
Question for Daria. We couldn't work it out. So in this scene, he's hallucinating someone who's got a hole in their forehead. We thought it was the girlfriend, but we don't know. Who was he hallucinating before he
I
struggles?
thought it was the newsreader.
Oh, did you? I thought it was the girlfriend. Who's he hallucinating before he wakes up holding the cat?
I couldn't quite tell either. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he wakes up, he's got the cat. He says, oh my God, it's the cat, it's the cat, it's the cat. And it's a little hard to tell, is he just saying, oh my God, it's only the cat? Or is he now...
saying the cat is evil.
Convinced the cat's evil. Delivers the cat to his ex-wife.
Which makes it seem like he thinks it's the cat's fault.
Possibly. And
So we don't know how long he's had it. We presume a long time.
yeah, it's the family cat, and he got it
He got it in the divorce.
And he then delivers it to the ex-wife, and then the killing entity visits the ex-wife and kills the cat, but not the wife. And he comes in the following day, finds her in the shower.
Ryan Treachild Smith hates pets.
Finds her in the shower, and they have a screaming match because the ex-wife is convinced he's a killer. He still really feels strongly for her and is trying to protect her. That whole sequence would absolutely be a shouting match. It will be a screaming, shouting match where two people are trying to communicate each other's...
But their emotions are
down.
just so high, they can't
And that's what I mean.
communicate.
I think that the sequence and the delivery was probably legitimately
The right
intense.
He's been here!
Don't come in this cinema! Nothing's gonna happen to me! Nothing's gonna happen to me! You can look to call the police! I never see you again! And then he closed one! You're the worst thing that ever happened to me!
Look, I care about you!
Don't! Get away! Leave me alone!
But whether it was the angle, whether it was the fact that it was a one-er, whether it was...
One-er.
It was a one-shot.
Oh, right, yep, got it, sorry.
Whether it was... Whatever it was, it didn't read real.
Yeah.
And probably not helped by the fact that he has been dialed way up pretty much all of the movie by this point.
Yeah. He now has the makeup showing he's got very little sleep.
Like, when we start, there's the lovemaking sequence,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
which is, acted pretty normal.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Up
So
until...
his performance just ramps up and up, as his emotions do, as events unfold.
Yeah, he goes
It's
full
just-
Nicolas Cage. You should never go full Nicolas Cage.
No, I love you, Nick. You were brilliant.
He is, as somebody's pointed out, he has
I was
neutral or,
reading
like-
on
up to 11.
Reddit the other day. Someone was just like in a hotel room flicking through channels what to watch. Oh, there's a Nicolas Cage film. I might just watch this to laugh through. He was leaving Las Vegas. Like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
That dude's amazing. Yes, you are, Nick. Yes, you are.
So this is definitely the kind of movie, and this is one of those things, I guess, we kind of think of those horror films, or these horror films, as kind of the lowest rung in the ladder of a movie. We'll throw out a porn film, we'll throw out a
No,
cheese...
porn's at the bottom, right?
That's my point. We throw out, and you're right, we throw out a porn film, we'll throw out a cheesy horror movie. But the fact is, if you want to get scared out of it...
There's no jump scares in this.
No, that's true. But if you want to get...
And we thank you, BTS.
Yeah, and if you want to get scared people, that's a hefty emotion to have to deliver.
Yeah. But the thing is...
And it needs finesse.
Yeah, no, scared is hard to get, but you have to get it through realistic performances.
Yeah, or...
And suspense. What was the suspense in this film?
Wasn't disbelief.
Because was it meant to be that... Like, the only possible suspense was we knew he was doing it, but he didn't. And that's not suspense for us.
But that's the thing.
As
We
viewers.
don't know. We don't know. Because up until the sequence where he realises, basically the attack on the psychiatrist, when he's beginning to get slashed and you realise, okay, his force
And that's
is
where
there.
I'm grateful it wasn't higher resolution, because it would have been wires everywhere.
Yeah, that's true. You don't know. And he's actually saying, why can't I see the person? And there's a mystery. Did you think for a brief period that Carla Dupre could have been the killer? The woman writing the book? Because there was a weird...
I did briefly wonder if she was more than she appeared in that regard. I don't know if I thought she was the killer.
Is that the
per
one who
se.
I said was the only person in the entire film who knew what the word lesbian was?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's the feminist. Yes. Sorry.
No, a lot of critics agree with you on this.
Yes. Really? A lot of critics?
Yeah.
Oh. I haven't read any critical...
I read a bunch of this.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's not much out there. But, yeah, a lot of critics were saying we were meant to suspect her.
That's what I thought. Yeah,
But
I was wondering.
I don't know where they're getting that from, because there was no reason to at all.
I briefly wondered if there was more to her than originally met the eye, but because
Unless it's, oh, you're not interested in women, I'll kill you now?
by this point also because they've layered on the stuff about him being either the killer or the possessee of the killer. they've laid it on so thick that it's not even we're laying it on thick as a false lead. We're laying it on thick, and if we try to remove it now, it would just actually fall apart.
Yeah.
That I thought, I don't know. The most I thought is maybe there was some kind of original instigating thing that she was behind, or she somehow got him possessed. But that is...
But none of that was even close.
And that's the thing. So the couple of things that got me was that there was a sequence where she kind of secures an interview and you don't know for sure whether or not she's been approached or she's kind of got in contact. And Carla's behaviour after that, about securing that interview, is so weird. So ridiculously over the top. She goes,
I appreciate that, Doctor. Bye.
Dunk, dunk.
Oh, yeah, you said it was angry. I didn't pick that up.
I believe we may already have had the idea that she's going to be the next victim. And so they're thinking in my head, maybe she's at least setting up the victims, because every victim up until now has had an interview with this woman.
I mean, yeah, you're right, but I feel really slow now that I didn't get that.
Well,
but
no.
then I think that's the movie more than me.
And then, and I was like, well, okay, maybe she's the killer, or at least, as you say, maybe she's setting up the victims, which then would have made the fact that when we are expecting the psychiatrist to be killed, the force instead goes for Carla Dupre, and we now know that the cops are looking over both houses. You know, we've got the trap set and everything. But
that was confusing in the film too.
Yeah.
Because...
it was difficult. It's like, what's the message there? I don't get it.
David Gaze was chucked out of the police station again because no one's believing him. And finally someone says, keep him under surveillance.
Yeah.
And then I was confused about what happened in what house, because another woman dies. They're just like, we don't know how you got in. I thought you were watching him. How did he get into his own house? But that was her house.
Yes.
Who has entire kitchen drawer that's devoted to a single drill.
Yes.
And we didn't even come back to that.
Who doesn't have the power drill drawer in their kitchen? Seriously.
Their kitchen. And there's nothing else in it.
You've been to some of those kitchen shops, they sell some weird stuff that I don't think any regular person uses for cooking.
All right, I've only ever been to one kitchen shop, and that's because the man working there looked a lot like Alan Rickman. I went there a bunch of times and I put it on Facebook, and that shop got a lot of business that summer.
I know Barbara doesn't like me.
Oh, don't be silly. She doesn't care about us.
Oh, don't you believe it?
Can you come over tonight?
Told you my mother's arriving.
Have you got time for a drink now?
Sorry, got to pick her up at the airport in an hour. Something wrong? Tell me tomorrow. Give me a kiss.
Can I say a thing from, like, the second scene of the movie? That is the first and last mention of the mother arriving. There is nothing else there.
At least with the room, the mother did appear. The cancer that was there vanished.
I haven't watched it. I still haven't watched it. Callum and I tried to watch it once. We were staying in Sydney.
It was the sweaty white buttocks.
Yeah, we couldn't watch it together. It was just too uncomfortable. Gross.
The belly button that you just couldn't deal with. But, the mother gets cancer like a third of the way into the movie, and then just it never is mentioned again. She just gets over it, apparently.
Well, also, she breaks the news as if she just found a really good parking spot.
Yeah.
Right.
So what we basically have is, we got these...
And we haven't discussed why Stephanie Parker has a gun. Is the answer just... It's the 80s.
Because movie, really? I thought about that too.
Is it cause movie or cause 80s?
Because 80s movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Although, interestingly, Stephanie is the opposite of Chekhov. The gun never goes off.
Doesn't help that she dropped half the bullets while her shaky hands were trying to load it.
This is true.
I'm exaggerating. She dropped like one. But anyway.
Although she does have an incredibly nice collection of tiny little cereal boxes along her shelf.
Tiny little Kellogg cereal boxes. She's got her Cocoa Pops and her Rice Krispies and shit lined up along the bench. It was quite adorable.
Oh, those little travel ones.
Those little mini travel ones, yeah. I remember them being really big.
Callum said old school. I was like, dude, you can still get them.
I know, but back then they were just a thing, I remember, and you could... Anyway, but also as a total sideline, and I will just point this out now.
Go on.
This movie follows the Malcolm...
What?
It follows the Malcolm progression for police cars.
This movie follows nothing, not even its own plot line.
Yeah. This movie follows the Malcolm progression for police cars.
How so?
Every police car that appears in the movie all the way through is a progression of the type of police cars that are actually used in Malcolm. So it starts with
you got the VB Commodore.
VC Commodore.
Honestly, Callum, no one in the world would notice that except you.
I know,
Did they get to a Crown Vic? Or that was too American?
Oh, no.
You're not talking about models?
No. The models get you. There's no Crown Vic in Malcolm. But
Right.
the introduction...
How silly of me.
But the reason I noticed it is I wondered if there was like one car hire place for police cars in Australian filmmaking
I see.
that would deliver certain types of cars. And I don't know why, but the same type of car, and it ended up with the Ford, the big boxy square Fords of the same era. I don't know why. It was just something that really stuck with me. Anyway, that was a little side thing.
Well, police cars were big boxy Fords for quite some time, so that last one.
And apparently also VB Commodores as well. I think there's 3 different car types that are police cars in this film, including the Commodore that she drives around at the end of the film.
And then the
that's
Tesla.
driven by the...
I could be wrong there.
that's driven by the ghosts. But anyway, yeah, so we...
Which apparently has voice command driving.
Yeah, it's Kit.
Yep. I wonder how many of them will be recorded. Oh god, we're all going to die.
Well, I just kept yelling at the woman in the film, shoot out the tyres, the car's going to come for you. But it didn't. The car just meekly reversed itself out of the scene and around a corner.
Yeah, it really did, with the horn going.
Yes.
And that's a wrap on Car. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ghost, for driving car. You can go home. Here's your check.
And that was such a fucking jank in the flow of the film as well. So
There were so many janks already, but yes.
So for 2/3 of the movie, we have roughly a whodunit murder mystery with mystical elements and trying to work out, is he the killer, is he not? I mean, and he himself is trying to work out, is he the killer, is he not? Or rather,
He's not even trying to figure that out.
Well, for the first stage, he assumes he's not.
thought that he's the killer.
And this is another thing as well. How is it that he can lie during the hypnosis sequence? Because when she says...
Oh, my God.
Is that because he is being asked as him? Is it the whole there is no Dana, only Zool?
Oh, I just assumed that. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I
That's
think
where I went to.
Yeah, well...
There is no David, only...
Yeah, and I
Whatever the
don't
fuck
even
there
think
is.
it's technicality. I think for the most part, he only has access to his own thoughts. It's only later on or during the murders that things leak across.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. I mean, also because hypnosis is mostly bullshit.
Yeah, and so we've had... Yeah, but not in movie. In movies, hypnosis is amazing. It tells you everything you need to know.
Well, she also goes from sodium pentothal.
Just like sodium
She goes straight to
pentothal.
fucking truth drugs. It's insane.
Serum.
Truth serum, yeah.
Which don't work much better in real life either.
It has a fascinating history, though. Truth serum has that drug has a really fascinating history. Starting in the this is so off topic, but yeah, starting in the 1930s, there was a drug similar to it that doctors were giving to birthing mothers. But it just, I don't know how much it killed pain. Not a lot, I think, is the answer. But it made them speak in this whole stream of consciousness manner, which made him think, can we use this on prisoners? The sentencing, not during the court case, because then they'd be focused on the trial. That drug can still even be used today on occasion treating phobias. It's a really interesting drug.
There is an amazing... If you want to see an actor doing...
And I got confused. I thought, pentobarbital. Oh, no, don't inject that.
If you want to see an actor doing a really good job of appearing to be under sodium pentothal, there's a 2-parter telemovie called Brotherhood of the Rose, which was a spy thriller. It's fucking amazing. There's some really terrible acting, there's some really good acting, but there's a sequence where one of the 2 brothers, who are the main characters in the film, is going to a dentist to take out all his teeth because he's going to walk into the woods and he's going to kill himself, going to starve himself as part of a Christian thing. It's already...
Weird.
It makes sense in the time. But he acts so well as somebody under a particular truth drug, but as drugged rather than just I'm telling the truth. He acts like he's got a dry mouth. There's something so visceral in his performance.
Or did he
really
try
good.
the drug and test it out?
Well...
Was it method?
Maybe. Yeah, so that was actually really cool. I just wanted to say, Brotherhood of the Rose, really cool.
Sure, it's available in many legal manners.
Don't know. It could be abandoned. Anyway, so we have David struggling with the idea that he's not the killer. Every woman that is in his world is becoming or has now become a murder victim of the weird force.
Well, you were just talking about the hypnosis that he was under.
Yes.
So the shrink puts him under this hypnosis and gets a couple of small bits of interesting information out of him.
Yeah.
But she still counts him out of hypnosis. And before the end says, you won't remember anything you said. Really? Because some of the things you said could have been important.
That whole you will wake up refreshed and you won't remember anything. It's such a default phrase. I don't know. And she actually has a moment when he basically targets her. He says she's the next victim.
She freaks out.
She's now at the point where she believes that whatever it is that's happening to these women, he is at least some kind of aware of what's going on.
The doctor, freaks out, goes to see the girlfriend, visits her in the uni library. Just fuck any kind of ethics that I'm meant to pursue. I'm going to talk to you about your boyfriend, my patient.
Yes. I did like the fact that she waited until she actually was speaking to the cops, setting up the things like, this is a breach of so many ethics. It's like, wow, let's go back through.
You're thinking about that now?
Mind you, it's rare enough in TV and movies that even acknowledge that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which was a TV series. There was one of our friends, Nicole, used to call Gross Misconduct. It was one of those kind of hospital drama things. Yeah. Anyway.
Averant, Nicole, the doctor, and it could have been so many things.
Yeah. So, yeah, we have a couple more deaths. Finally, the police have said, okay.
Oh, before that, we've got Dr. What is her name? No.
Langton. The psycho.
Lydia Langton,
Yeah.
the shrink. So, girlfriend, Neva, tells her how ignorant she is. Read this book. And so, Dr. Lydia starts reading it in the library. A couple of weird things happen.
Oh, the Ghostbuster sequence. Yes.
Totally the Ghostbusters sequence. Except there's no book stack.
Yeah.
And the doctor's speed reads, so she's instantly halfway through the book. But she's running from the library because weird things happen, and she comes across two people and runs away from them, where the safety is.
Yeah, so she's being tracked out of the library, and we're getting closer and closer and closer. And actually, that's the one where she wakes up.
I just wanted to quickly say, we skipped over the third murder. She's killed in the swimming pool, and he discovers her and jumps into the pool.
That bugged the hell out of you.
Covered in blood and evidence. Yes, Of course it bugged the hell. And that's the murder. He went to the shrink's house after that. He was still wet part way down, but he wasn't covered in blood anymore.
But this is the thing. So I know you yelled at him twice the times you watched it to cover yourself. I maintain that this is the first time he's now had it confirmed that he is at least somehow connected to the murders and it's all real. So I'm giving him a pass on that. I'm giving him a pass on wading into the pool. Although he yells something and I don't know if we're meant to understand what he says.
Was it like, oh God? Or, we couldn't figure out what he said.
So we finally have the murder of the psychiatrist. Full fucking Rosemary's Baby, Exorcist levels of possession. She does a big old fight with the knife and dies.
She gets a few licks in. I liked that.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, I thought the delivery of the slashes on his face were done really well. I mean, considering the low resolution on the version that we watched, the sudden appearance of those slashes on his cheek, I thought were pretty good.
We didn't mention the death of the lizard. I don't know if we even talked about the death of the dog at the start. He hates animals.
Actually, that's a good point. Lots of animals die in this.
Lots of animals die in this.
Well, lots, as in all of the animals we're introduced to.
In this.
Yeah. But, yeah, so we have the big death scene with the big fight with the psychic, because she's basically brought him to the fore. The drugs are in his system, and he sits up and he has the black eyes, which, holy fuck.
I didn't think that was done too badly.
No, it's not. And those contacts are really
black
common.
eyes versus a black eye.
Yeah. It is actually one of those things. Whenever you see it, it's really creepy, and I think it always looks really good.
I don't know if I go as far as say always, but...
No, I
think it did the job here.
It did the job here.
I think every time I've seen the kind of the full black eye, it always looks creepy as hell. And it's so much better than the wide eye that they try to do a couple of times where they're kind of looking up into their own eyelids. Oh, yeah, and there was a sequence which reminded me, there's a video game called Phantasmagoria, which was one of the FMV video games on a full motion video. So it was a Sierra Games horror game one. It was made for adults. And it was on a DVD. And you had these sequences that were real actors being filmed. And what happens is that they take possession of a house and the husband gets possessed very early on. There's a sex scene very early on, which is a little weird. And then very
So just like this.
Built into the game a bit later on is a sex scene that turns into a crazy rape scene sort of thing. It's all very creepy, and the woman's not into it. And that second sex scene with Neva kind of over that when
he freaks out.
When he freaks out, and she doesn't
like
scary react to it, but he kind of
she looks
collapses
like she's possessed too.
Was she looking to the side?
I didn't know if it was a sex scene or a dream.
Yeah, same.
And this is another problem. We don't get that clarity on those.
A sex dream like that, is he doing the sex with the girlfriend?
And then we don't know what this possessing demon wants. Is it just...
If it exists, we don't know.
Well, no, okay, so it definitely exists. So I think we...
Is it a demon? That's what I mean by we don't know.
Okay, we don't know what it is. Yes, this is true.
It's something, but yeah.
Yeah.
Again, but as you say, we don't know. And we don't know, for example, why it goes off model when it comes to the first attack on the X and just kills the cat instead.
Yeah, that was really weird. Again, that was then leading into the whole
And
concept.
is that because he got woken up by something else? Because now there isn't the cat to wake him up.
Well, I thought that was another potential...
And can you only do one at a time? Just, you go, well, done the cat,
Or
can't
does
do
the
the
cat
humans
have to
now.
die because it helped him not murder earlier?
That's a great idea, that he only has the energy for one life a night. I was like, God, so many potential really good storylines. But I took it almost as he needed to kill the cat because it was a protective influence. It was a protective force. But then why does it save the... Yes. Anyway.
Yeah, this movie was so confusing.
It was very, yeah. So, but yeah, we end up with the whole big fight scene. The psychologist gets some licks in, but eventually she succumbs with a drill hole in the head and the eye
And
sucked
the third
out.
eye.
And he is discovered by the police
But
there.
was that an eye sucked out or both eyes?
Both.